Iliad Voss had always preferred plants to people. His small lab, tucked away in the corner of a bustling human colony on the edge of the Andromeda galaxy, was his sanctuary. Rows of alien flora lined the shelves, each plant glowing faintly under artificial sunlight. To most, they were just strange weeds plucked from distant planets. But to Iliad, they were puzzles waiting to be solved. He spent hours studying their patterns, their growth cycles, and their quirks. It wasn't glamorous work, but it kept him busy and safe. On this particular evening, as the hum of machinery filled the air, something unusual happened. A sharp crackle broke through the quiet, followed by a voice that didn't belong to anyone Iliad knew. The transmission came through his comms device, distorted and fragmented. "You, chosen," the voice said haltingly. Then, clearer, "You are summoned." Before Iliad could even process what he'd heard, the room shimmered. A circle of light appeared on the floor, pulsating like a heartbeat. Panic gripped him as he stumbled backward, knocking over a tray of soil samples. Before he could react further, the light surged upward, engulfing him completely. For a moment, everything went white. When his vision cleared, he found himself lying on cold, smooth ground. Not the metal floor of his lab, but something softer, almost organic. Blinking against the brightness, Iliad sat up slowly. Surrounding him was an amphitheater unlike anything he'd ever seen. Towering structures spiraled upward, made of translucent material that refracted light into dazzling colors. Above him, 3 suns hung low in the sky, casting overlapping hues of gold, pink, and violet. A crowd had gathered, their forms both familiar and alien. They stood tall, their skin shimmering like polished crystal, catching the light with every movement. Their eyes glowed faintly, giving them an ethereal quality. At the center of it all stood a regal figure draped in flowing robes that seemed woven from starlight itself. She stepped forward, her presence commanding silence. "You are Iliad Voss," she said, her voice resonating with authority yet carrying a melodic tone. "I am Queen Lizera of the Cytherians." Iliad blinked, struggling to find words. Yes, that's me. But why am I here?" Lizera tilted her head slightly, as if amused by his confusion. "Our prophecy foretold your arrival. You have been chosen to fulfill a great destiny, to become the groom of my daughter, Princess Nyxara." Iliad froze, his mind racing. Groom. Destiny. This had to be some kind of mistake. Wait, no. There's been a misunderstanding. I'm nobody special. Just a botanist. Definitely not groom material. But Lizera didn't seem swayed. "Your species is known for its adaptability and ingenuity," she continued, ignoring his protests. "These qualities align perfectly with our needs. Through this union, we believe harmony will be restored to our world." Harmony. Iliad wanted to laugh, or scream. Instead, he looked around at the sea of glowing faces watching him intently. Whatever this place was, whatever these beings wanted, one thing was clear: he wasn't going home anytime soon. As the weight of the situation settled over him, Iliad realized he had 2 choices. He could fight this absurdity tooth and nail, or try to understand it. Taking a deep breath, he decided on the latter. After all, running wouldn't help. Not when he was millions of light years away from Earth, standing in the middle of an alien wedding he hadn't signed up for. Little did he know, this bizarre twist of fate would change everything, for better or worse. Iliad's first instinct was to bolt. The amphitheater, the glowing aliens, the Queen's proclamation, it all felt like a fever dream. But as he glanced at the towering Cytherians surrounding him, their luminous eyes fixed on his every move, he realized escape wasn't an option. Not here. Not now. So with a deep breath and a muttered prayer to whatever cosmic force had dropped him into this mess, Iliad decided to play along for now. Queen Lizera wasted no time. She gestured toward a tall figure standing nearby, a Cytherian male with sharp features and an unreadable expression. "This is Kale," she announced. He will guide you through our customs and prepare you for the wedding." Kale stepped forward, his movements fluid and deliberate. His crystalline skin shimmered faintly under the triple suns, making him look almost otherworldly. Which, Elliot reminded himself, he absolutely was. "Follow me," Kale said in a low, measured voice. Without waiting for a response, he turned and began walking. Elliot hesitated for a moment before scrambling after him, feeling more out of place with each step. As they walked through the sprawling city, Kale explained the basics of Zitherian culture. Every gesture, every word, even the way one stood carried meaning. For example, raising your hands with palms facing outward signaled respect, while crossing your arms tightly meant defiance. "You must learn quickly," Kale warned. "Failure to adhere to protocol could offend the royal family. And that would not end well for you." Elliot nodded nervously, trying to absorb everything. "Got it. No crossed arms." "Check." He paused, glancing around at the elegant architecture and the graceful beings moving about. "But why me? I'm just a guy who grows weird plants. What makes me so special?" Kale stopped abruptly and turned to face him. For the first time, there was a flicker of something in his glowing eyes. Amusement, perhaps. "Prophecy works in mysterious ways," he replied cryptically. "Your selection is not ours to question. It simply is." The next few days were a whirlwind of lessons. Elliot learned how to bow properly, a slight tilt of the head accompanied by a soft glow from his fingertips. If he had glowing skin, which he didn't, he practiced formal greetings and memorized the hierarchy of the Zitherian court. At night, exhausted but unable to sleep, he replayed the day's events in his mind, wondering if this was all some elaborate prank. One afternoon, during a break from training, Elliot met Princess Nixara for the first time. She entered the garden where he was practicing hand gestures, her presence commanding yet gentle. Unlike her mother, Nixara radiated warmth. Her silvery hair cascaded down her back, and her smile put Elliot oddly at ease. "You're the human?" she asked, tilting her head curiously. Her voice was softer than her mother's, almost musical. Yeah," Elliot stammered, suddenly aware of how awkward he must look holding his hands mid-glow pose. "That's me. Elliot Voss. Botanist. Professional plant whisperer. Amateur alien groom." Nixara chuckled, the sound like wind chimes. "I understand this isn't what you expected. Believe me, I didn't expect it either." They talked for hours, discovering a shared passion for botany. Nixara revealed she had studied Earth's ecosystems extensively, fascinated by its resilience despite humanity's mistakes. As they exchanged stories, Elliot found himself relaxing for the first time since arriving. Maybe this arrangement wouldn't be so bad after all, or at least not entirely unbearable. By the end of the week, Elliot had made significant progress. While still clumsy in his attempts at Cytherian etiquette, he was beginning to grasp the nuances of their society. More importantly, he'd started to see glimpses of hope in an otherwise overwhelming situation. If nothing else, Nixara seemed genuinely kind, and their budding friendship gave him something to hold on to. But just as Elliot began to settle into his new reality, trouble loomed on the horizon. Rumors spread of dissent among the nobility, whispers questioning whether a human was truly worthy of joining the royal line. And then there was Prince Zindor, a rival suitor whose arrival promised to complicate things further. For now, though, Elliot focused on surviving one day at a time. After all, adapting to the unknown was what humans did best, even when the unknown involved marrying an alien princess. Elliot's fragile sense of progress shattered the moment Prince Zindor arrived. The amphitheater buzzed with anticipation as the crowd parted to make way for the newcomer. Clad in armor that shimmered like liquid silver, Zindor was everything Elliot wasn't. Tall, imposing, and radiating confidence. His crystalline skin glowed brighter than most Cytherians, almost as if he were lit from within. He carried himself with an air of superiority, his piercing gaze sweeping over the gathered spectators before finally landing on Iliad. "This is him," Sindor sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "This human. This is who you think worthy of Princess Nyxara." Iliad straightened instinctively, though he couldn't help feeling small under the scrutiny. Kale stepped forward, his tone calm but firm. "Prince Sindor, your presence here is unexpected. Queen Lizure has already confirmed Iliad Voss as the chosen groom." "Chosen by whom?" Sindor shot back, his glowing fists clenched at his sides. "An ancient prophecy no one truly understands. Humans are primitive, weak beings. They do not belong among us, let alone in our royal family." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some agreeing with Sindor, others unsure. Iliad felt heat rise to his cheeks, but he forced himself to stay composed. Losing his temper wouldn't help, not when everyone around him seemed ready to judge his every move. Instead, he took a deep breath and turned to face the prince directly. "I may not be Zitherian," Iliad said evenly, surprising even himself with how steady his voice sounded. "But I didn't ask for this any more than you did. If you have a problem with me, fine, but don't insult my entire species based on ignorance." Sindor smirked, clearly unimpressed. Bold words for someone so far out of their depth. Let's see if actions match them. Queen Lizire intervened before things could escalate further. With a wave of her hand, she silenced the murmuring crowd. "Enough," she declared. "If there is doubt about Iliad's suitability, we will settle it the traditional way, with trials. Both candidates will prove their worth through tests of virtue, strength, and wisdom." The announcement sent shockwaves through the assembly. Trials were rare these days, reserved only for matters of great importance. For Iliad, they represented both the challenge and an opportunity, a chance to show he wasn't just some random outsider thrust into this role. Still, dread weighed heavily on him. How could he possibly compete against someone like Sindor? Over the next few days, preparations for the trials consumed the city. Iliad trained tirelessly under Kale's guidance, learning combat techniques and strategies to navigate the challenges ahead. Though physically outmatched, Iliad focused on what made him unique, his quick thinking and resourcefulness. The first trial took place in a vast arena filled with towering plants native to Cytheria. Each contestant had to retrieve a sacred crystal hidden deep within the foliage. But there was a catch. The plants were carnivorous, their tendrils lashing out at intruders. As soon as the trial began, Sindor charged forward, slicing through the vines with brute force. Iliad, however, approached cautiously, observing the plant's behavior. He noticed patterns in their movements, realizing they reacted to vibrations in the ground. Thinking quickly, Iliad grabbed a fallen branch and used it to create noise elsewhere, distracting the plants long enough to slip past them unnoticed. When he reached the crystal, he found another obstacle, a pool of glowing liquid blocking his path. Drawing on his knowledge of earth botany, Iliad identified the substance as similar to a toxin-neutralizing enzyme found in certain terrestrial plants. Using a pouch of powdered herbs he brought along, he neutralized the liquid and retrieved the crystal. By the time he returned to the starting point, Sindor was already there, panting and covered in scratches. The crowd erupted into cheers, many visibly impressed by Iliad's ingenuity. Even Sindor looked taken aback, though his scowl suggested he wasn't ready to concede defeat. As the day ended, Iliad allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. He might not have been born for this world, but he was determined to hold his own. One trial down, 2 more to go, and each would bring its own set of challenges. Whatever lay ahead, Iliad knew one thing for sure: giving up wasn't an option. Not anymore. The second trial loomed over Iliad like a storm cloud, but his victory in the first had given him a newfound confidence. He spent the night poring over notes about Cytherian culture and biology, determined to stay one step ahead of Sindor. Yet, as dawn broke, he found himself restless, not because of the upcoming challenge, but because something about the entire situation felt off. It started with a question Nixara asked during breakfast. They had grown closer over the past few days, sharing late-night conversations about their shared love for plants and their mutual discomfort with the arranged marriage. That morning, however, her tone was unusually serious. "Eliot," she said softly, "do you ever wonder why this prophecy exists? Why now?" Caught off guard, Eliot hesitated. "I assumed it was just part of your tradition. You know, fate stepping in when things get tough." Nixara frowned, her glowing eyes dimming slightly. "That's what we're told. But lately, I've been wondering if there's more to it. My mother seems desperate, almost fearful. And some of the elders whisper about past unions that ended badly, very badly." Her words lingered in Eliot's mind long after they parted ways. Later that day, while exploring the palace archives during a rare moment of free time, he stumbled upon records detailing those past unions. What he discovered chilled him to the bone. Each cosmic marriage between humans and Cytherians had resulted in catastrophic consequences: ecosystems collapsing, civilizations fracturing, and even wars erupting. The documents hinted at a pattern, suggesting the unions destabilized the natural balance rather than restoring it. Eliot's heart raced as he pieced together the implications. If this wedding wasn't about saving Cytheria's environment, and might actually harm it, then what was Queen Lizura really trying to achieve? Was she so desperate to preserve her people that she'd risk everything on an unproven prophecy? Before he could delve deeper, Kale appeared at the entrance of the archive chamber. "You shouldn't be here," the diplomat said sternly, though his expression softened when he saw the distress on Eliot's face. "What did you find?" Reluctantly, Eliot showed him the records. To his surprise, Kale didn't dismiss them outright. Instead, he sighed heavily and admitted, "There are truths we don't speak of openly. The Queen believes this union is our only hope, but not everyone agrees. Some fear history will repeat itself." Determined to confront the issue head-on, Eliot sought out Nixara later that evening. Under the cover of twilight, they met in the royal gardens, where bioluminescent flowers cast a soft glow around them. Eliot explained what he'd learned, watching as Nixara's expression shifted from shock to determination. "We can't let this go forward blindly," she whispered. "If the wedding poses a threat to both our worlds, we have to stop it." Together, they devised a plan. Rather than outright rejecting the prophecy, which would enrage the traditionalists, they decided to propose an alternative solution, combining human agricultural techniques with Cytherian technology to restore the planet's ecosystem naturally. It was risky, but it offered a way to honor the spirit of unity without risking disaster. As they spoke, Eliot realized how much he trusted Nixara, not just as a partner in this predicament, but as someone who genuinely cared about doing what was right. For the first time since arriving, he felt less like an outsider and more like someone capable of making a difference. But their conversation was cut short by the distant toll of bells, signaling the start of the third trial. As they hurried back toward the arena, Eliot couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest challenges were yet to come. Secrets had a way of unraveling at the worst possible moments, and this one might unravel everything. The third trial was unlike anything Eliot had faced before. Instead of physical combat or navigating treacherous terrain, this challenge tested the candidates' mental strength and ability to work together. It was called the Trial of Unity, a name that sent shivers down Eliot's spine as he stepped into the arena. The space shimmered with energy, walls rising from the ground to form a labyrinthine structure made entirely of translucent material. Inside, the air crackled with an otherworldly hum. Queen Lizura addressed the crowd gathered around the arena. "This trial will test not only your individual virtues, but also your capacity to unite disparate forces," she announced, her voice echoing through the amphitheater. "You must enter the collective mind, a simulation of our people's consciousness, and restore harmony within it." Eliot exchanged a glance with Cinder, who smirked confidently. Clearly, the prince saw this as another opportunity to dominate, but Eliot knew brute force wouldn't help here. This trial wasn't about overpowering others. It was about understanding them. As the two contestants entered the labyrinth, they were enveloped in a soft light. When their vision cleared, they found themselves standing in a vast, surreal landscape. Towering crystalline trees stretched toward a sky filled with swirling colors, while fragments of glowing shapes drifted aimlessly like lost pieces of a puzzle. A disembodied voice echoed around them. To succeed, you must bring balance to what is broken. Cinder wasted no time charging forward, his fists blazing with energy as he smashed through obstacles. He barked orders at Elliot, treating him as little more than a sidekick. "Follow me if you want to survive," he shouted, his arrogance evident. But Elliot ignored him, choosing instead to observe the environment carefully. The drifting fragments seemed to react to emotions. Fear caused them to scatter, while calmness drew them closer. Realizing this, Elliot took slow, deliberate steps, projecting calmness and empathy. To his surprise, the fragments began to gravitate toward him, merging into larger structures that resembled bridges and pathways. "Stop wasting time." Cinder snapped, frustrated by Elliot's methodical approach. "We don't need your human tricks." Elliot didn't respond. Instead, he focused on repairing the fractured sections of the simulation. He discovered that each fragment represented a different aspect of Zetherian society. Tradition, innovation, unity, and resilience. By connecting these elements thoughtfully, he started rebuilding the collective consciousness piece by piece. When Cinder tried to take control of one of the newly formed bridges, it collapsed under his aggressive handling. Frustrated, he turned on Elliot. "Why won't you fight me? Are you too cowardly?" Elliot met his glare calmly. "Fighting isn't going to solve this. You're tearing things apart instead of bringing them together. That's not unity. It's destruction." For a moment, Cinder hesitated, his confidence wavering. Then, with a growl, he lunged at Elliot, attempting to overpower him physically. But just as the prince threw a punch, the ground beneath them shifted violently. The simulation responded to conflict, causing the entire landscape to destabilize. Realizing the danger, Elliot extended a hand toward Cinder. "If we keep fighting, we'll both lose. Work with me." After a tense pause, Cinder reluctantly grabbed Elliot's hand. Together, they stabilized the collapsing terrain, combining their efforts to repair the damage. Though reluctant, Cinder began to mimic Elliot's approach, focusing less on domination and more on cooperation. Slowly but surely, the fragments came together, forming a radiant core that pulsed with life. When the trial ended, the two emerged from the labyrinth exhausted but alive. The crowd erupted into cheers, though many looked surprised to see Elliot still standing alongside Cinder. Queen Lizera nodded approvingly, her expression unreadable. Though Elliot had survived the trial, the experience left him drained, not just physically, but emotionally. He had proven himself capable of uniting even the most stubborn opponents. Yet, as Nixara approached him afterward with a proud smile, Elliot couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was yet to come. Elliot barely had time to recover from the trial of unity before he found himself summoned to the Royal Council chamber. The room was vast, its walls lined with glowing glyphs that pulsed faintly in rhythm, with the voices of the elders seated around a circular table. Queen Lizera presided at the center, her regal presence commanding respect, even as her expression betrayed hints of unease. To Elliot's surprise, Nixara stood beside her mother, looking resolute yet nervous. "You have proven yourself worthy," Lizera began, addressing both Elliot and Cinder. "But the final decision rests not only with me but with this council." Cinder stepped forward confidently, his crystalline armor gleaming under the light. "Your Majesty, my victory in the trial speaks for itself. I am the rightful choice to stand by Princess Nixara and lead our people into prosperity." Before Elliot could protest, or even think of how to respond, Nixara spoke up. Her voice carried authority, cutting through the tension like a blade. "Mother, elders, there is something we must discuss before any decision is made." She gestured for Iliad to step forward. Together, they presented their findings about the dangers of past cosmic unions and proposed an alternative solution, combining human agricultural techniques with Zetherian technology to restore the planet's ecosystem naturally. As Nixaret explained their plan, Iliad noticed subtle shifts in the elders' expressions, some intrigued, others skeptical, and a few outright hostile. "This is madness," one elder exclaimed, rising from his seat. His skin flared brighter, a sign of anger among Zetherians. "Prophecy cannot be ignored. To abandon it would bring ruin upon us all." Another elder countered, her tone measured but firm. "Perhaps prophecy has led us astray before. If these humans offer a way to heal our world without risking further disaster, should we not consider it?" The debate grew heated, with voices overlapping in a cacophony of opinions. Through it all, Iliad remained silent, letting Nixaret take the lead. She argued passionately, drawing on her scientific knowledge and emphasizing the urgency of their environmental crisis. For once, Iliad didn't feel out of place. He realized he wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for a future where hope triumphed over fear. Queen Lizira listened intently, her gaze shifting between her daughter and the council members. Finally, she raised a hand, silencing the room. "Enough," she said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "I called upon prophecy because I believed it offered salvation. But perhaps salvation lies not in blind obedience, but in innovation and unity." Her words hung heavy in the air. Then, turning to Nixara, she added, "You have shown wisdom beyond your years, my child. And you," she looked at Iliad, "have proven that strength comes not from force but from understanding." Despite the Queen's apparent support, opposition remained strong. Many elders refused to accept change so easily, sensing the tide might turn against them. Nixara took a bold step. Addressing the crowd directly, she declared, "If this council will not act, then I will. I renounce my claim to the throne unless it is shared equally with someone who values progress over tradition." Gasps rippled through the chamber. Even Cinder looked stunned, though his clenched fists suggested simmering rage. Queen Lizira stared at her daughter, pride warring with concern in her glowing eyes. As the council deliberated, Iliad felt a mix of emotions, hope, fear, and determination. Whatever happened next, one thing was clear. Nixara had chosen her path, and he was ready to walk it with her. Together, they had sparked a revolution, one that might save two worlds or tear them apart. The council chamber fell silent after Nixara's declaration. Her words hung in the air like a challenge, daring anyone to oppose her. For a moment, it seemed as though time itself had frozen. Then, Queen Lizira stood slowly, her movements deliberate and measured. She gazed at her daughter with an expression that was equal parts pride and sorrow. "You would risk everything for this path?" Lizira asked, her voice soft but steady. "Even your crown?" Nixara met her mother's eyes without hesitation. "If my crown means perpetuating harm instead of healing, then yes, I will risk it all." Iliad watched the exchange, his heart pounding. He admired Nixara's courage, but he couldn't help worrying about the consequences. The elders murmured among themselves, their glowing forms dimming and brightening in waves of uncertainty. Some looked angry, others contemplative, but none seemed willing to make the first move. Finally, one elder, a frail yet sharp-eyed Zetherian named Elder Valen, spoke up. His voice carried weight, commanding attention. "Perhaps we have clung too tightly to tradition," he admitted, surprising everyone. "Our world is dying, and clinging to old ways may hasten its end. Let us consider this proposal, not as betrayal, but as evolution." Valen's words ignited a shift in the room. Other elders began nodding reluctantly, their resistance softening. Even Cinder, who had been seething quietly, lowered his head in reluctant acceptance. Though prideful, he wasn't foolish enough to fight against the tide when it turned decisively. Queen Lizira stepped forward once more, her demeanor resolute. "Then let it be so. she announced. "We shall embrace change, for the sake of our people and our planet." Turning to Elliot and Nyxara, she added, "You two will lead this transformation together. Not merely as rulers, but as partners in building a brighter future." Cheers erupted from the younger members of the audience, many of whom had grown disillusioned with the rigid traditions of their elders. Inspired by Nyxara's bravery, they rallied behind the couple, chanting their names until the chamber vibrated with energy. It was clear the tide had turned. In the days that followed, preparations began for a new kind of ceremony, one that celebrated unity not through prophecy, but through shared purpose. Plants from Earth were introduced to Cytheria's soil, blending seamlessly with native species under Iliad's guidance. Together, he and Nyxara worked tirelessly to implement their plan, earning admiration even from skeptics. When the day of the ceremony arrived, the amphitheater glowed brighter than ever before. This time, however, the focus wasn't on ancient rituals or forced alliances. Instead, the event symbolized hope, a promise to heal both worlds. As Iliad stood beside Nyxara, holding her hand, he felt something he hadn't expected: belonging. Afterward, Queen Lazura made another unexpected announcement. "I have ruled long enough," she declared, stepping down gracefully. "Let Nyxara ascend as queen, with Iliad as co-ruler." As the crowd erupted into applause, Iliad realized how far he'd come. From a reluctant botanist plucked from obscurity to a leader bridging two civilizations. Hand in hand with Nyxara, he looked toward the horizon, where the triple suns cast golden light over the land. They still faced challenges ahead: resistance from traditionalists, ecological uncertainties, but they faced them together. And in that unity, they found strength. Hope had triumphed over despair, and love had transcended galaxies. Whatever the future held, Iliad knew one thing for certain: he was exactly where he was meant to be.